Salutations, Shades, and welcome back to Talking with Shadows, your one-stop shop for all things strange and unusual. Here with your host today, Marcus Dee. And joining me in the studio today, guys, I have a guest host. Please welcome to the studio my good buddy Johnny Smith from the Inquisitive Minds podcast. Say hello, Johnny.
Hey, everybody.
Awesome. Me and Vic were recently on, I think it was your 13th or 14th episode.
I want to say episode 16.
16, never mind. Where we were talking all about shadow people. It's where our whole stuff started. So
yeah, man, it was a great episode, really informative and really fun. And I just want to say thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely, man. I'm so happy. Unfortunately, guys, I gotta let you guys know, Vic's father passed away this morning. That's why he was unable to join me. His father had been having a whole lot of, he's been having some health problems recently. Vic went to take care of him. So I know throughout the month of November, we hadn't been able to put up any new content. For the beginning of the month, I had COVID, and that knocked me out for a good 2 weeks. And I record all the stuff, so unfortunately, we were unable to do it then. And then right after the time I started recovering, unfortunately, Vic's dad's health started declining. I know we all wish him, all of our sympathies and our hearts go out to Vic right now. He'll be back in this. Yeah.
My deepest condolences to him. And on another note, it's good to see you're recovered from COVID as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah. All our hearts go out to him. And he'll be back, guys, when he's ready. Until then, I'm going to keep this going. There's tons of great people that we wanted to have on the podcast. So Vic gave me his blessing to invite Johnny, of course, because we knew immediately when we were listening to your podcast that we wanted you on our podcast to kind of talk about some stuff. Johnny, do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, no problem.
Where you can hear it? Yeah.
First off, we're on all streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher, all that jazz. We got a YouTube channel up, facebook.com/Inquisitive Minds podcast. It's essentially Coast to Coast meets Joe Rogan.
That's true. I call that accurate.
Yeah, I bring on people to interview that have interesting stories to tell, whether it's an expertise in a paranormal field. I brought on paranormal investigators. I brought on mediums, or it's just something fascinating that the public, I think, is less educated on. I had an author on. I had 2 veterans on, and had a special veteran suicide episode. I just like to interview interesting people that have something strange to tell.
Absolutely. And I think all of our listeners would definitely benefit from checking out your podcast. And if you guys want to hear a funny story about how I found Johnny, this was funny. So both me and Johnny are stand-up comedians. And one of the things that happens when you become a stand-up comedian is you immediately start friending on Facebook, like every other. We all end up with these mutual friends, and either I added you or you added me. I can't remember which one it was. And then all of a sudden, and I have no idea who these people are on my Facebook time feed. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I see this post from Johnny about that he's about to start a paranormal podcast, and I'm like, wow, this seems pretty cool. I want to check out his first episode. And so I made a point. I saved it. I'm like, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to see kind of what's going on. And your very first episode was Roswell, the Roswell UFO incident, which me and Vic have never covered on our podcast because that is a massive UFO site. I mean, it is the major point in ufology where everything changes. And it is, people have written stuff about it. People have written so much about it. And I'm like, this dude is, man, he's coming out strong. Okay.
I think I was really able to boil it down to the skin and bones, what did happen, what was speculation, and shout out to the late great Stanton Friedman, and he interviewed people for 20 odd years that were there.
Mm-hmm. And I'm watching your episode, and I'm like, man, I was expecting you to just do the bare. You did not do the bare bones, man. You did some deep stuff that even I didn't know about, and I'm like, this guy did his research. And I'm not going to bash your first guess, but I'm like, you had a staggering more amount of information in what you were talking about than I think what your guest did, and you were educating him at times. And I'm like, he was fine, and he was adding stuff, but I'm like, okay, Johnny knows what he's talking about, and that's why I was like super impressed.
I wanted to come off strong in the first one, because I figured, I didn't know how many guests I would be able to get as far as people I wanted to get. So I figured if I would have to carry it on my back by doing the heavy research, that's what I was going to do.
No, and I get that. Having guests on, sometimes you never know how much they're gonna be able to add to the conversation. So you need to be prepared for that. Now, I'm not saying that I don't have a whole lot of faith in you for today's episode, but as a host, it is in the back of your mind that, again, you want to make sure that you're doing that. But no, I thought you did such a fantastic job, and then I started commenting questions on your stuff.
Yeah, I appreciated that.
Yeah, and then I'm like, I just got to reach out to this guy, and then I think that's how we got linked up. Also, I'm not trying to give you guys a plug, but you guys should go check out his podcast, especially his merch, because he has like the best shirt ever for dealing talking about shadow people. There's ways to get rid of shadow people, and it's the advice that me and Vic gave, and Vic's advice was improve your mental health, and mine was don't smoke meth. And they're both. It's a hilarious T-shirt, I say, and it's great, and both are accurate.
It's up in my Teespring store, guys. Check it out, please.
Absolutely. Oh, so now that I've given you a full amount of credentials for this, guys, yeah. So both me and Johnny are comedians. We're gonna try to keep today's episode as lighthearted as we can. I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys the warning ahead of time on this, because today, guys, we're gonna be talking about the Adrenochrome Conspiracy, and if you guys are not familiar with it, it's a not safe for work topic. It's pretty dark. It's pretty grim. So we're gonna try to be as lighthearted as we can about it to make sure that you guys aren't super depressed by it, but when our patrons selected Immortality as the month of November's theme, me and Vic were trying to come up with a different list of topics that we could talk about. And one of the things that I love is I love modern paranormal stuff. I love stuff as much as that we can talk about in the modern context. Vic, he loves old monsters. He loves all these old stories and these ancient legends and things like that. He does, and I love newer stuff. I'm not saying he doesn't love some newer stuff too, but I'm always trying to see kind of what is our modern age paranormal stuff, and the Adrenochrome Conspiracy it definitely fits the bill.
The Adrenochrome Conspiracy falls under almost every conspiracy to date. Currently going on, and I like modern conspiracies myself because they have to be convincing enough for them to be believable in the society we live in. There's cameras everywhere now. What can go on behind these closed doors?
Yeah, there's some sort of kernel of truth in a conspiracy that people have to genuinely believe for it to be able to take off, and then just start wildly conjecturing. Or keep in mind where the term conspiracy theory even comes from, because that's a term that came from the JFK assassination as a way to call somebody a conspiracy theorist. It's essentially a slur. I mean, really, like in our field, for what
it carries a very negative connotation.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't real conspiracy theories that are just bunk and they're just not true. But shortly after Kennedy's assassination, and people are trying to say there's a bunch of deep state stuff going on, or there's other things going on, that term starts getting thrown onto everybody as a way of just calling them crazy. It's a way it makes you immediately go on the defensive. If I call Johnny, if I call you a conspiracy theorist, immediately now you have to explain why you are not a crazy person. Why are you not just a nut?
Absolutely. And in defense of conspiracy theories, they form, but then there's times where you find out they're true. Not to go back, but you touched on JFK, Martin Luther King's assassination. It was a conspiracy theory that the U.S. government was involved for years, and I think it was 2001. They published a report admitting their involvement. But it quietly swept under the rug. But up until that, for 40 years almost, you were a conspiracy theorist. Air quotes.
Oh yeah. It was the 80s or the 90s. Oh God, I think it's called the Greenbrier, the Briar. Essentially, people at the time were saying that they were seeing these massive amount of trucks filled with dirt that was leaving the White House and that the White House was having bunkers made under it, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's just a bunch of conspiracy theorists and all that." And there's nothing like that. And as of today, you can go on tours of said bunker.
Yeah.
That they claim didn't exist. You can actually now go on tours of these things.
Yeah, it's wild. There's a lot that people see. It's the problem is it's all locked in together. Conspiracy theorists, because even if a theory can be found out to be true 50 years later, it's still standing right beside the theory of Lady Gaga being a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just absurdity and truth stand side by side. And even when something is proven, it's usually too far along to be acknowledged.
Absolutely. All right. So now that you guys have full forewarning that this is definitely a dark topic for today, let's dive into the Adrenochrome Conspiracy. Let's explain exactly what it is. So if you guys have never heard of the Adrenochrome Conspiracy, the Adrenochrome Conspiracy is this theory that social elites, the higher ups, have been kidnapping children and essentially torturing them or scaring them, and then harvesting their adrenochrome that is produced from their experience of doing this to use it to either A, to create this like super psychedelic high with no negative side effects, or B, to live forever. The purpose of why we chose this, for immortality. That social elites are essentially using this byproduct of children's fear to live forever.
Yeah, it's produced. It's a product of adrenaline. And what they say is they have to put these children in such fearful situations that it's produced, and then they harvest it. But depending on what your source is too, some people will say they're scared. Other people will say they're harvested and killed. Some, and like you said, some say it's a psychedelic high that can't be replicated. It's nothing you can imagine. While others say it extends life. It's almost like a quasi immortality drug.
So I'm trying to think. So do I want to start with? Okay. So this whole theory that that there's a certain group of people harvesting blood or harvesting these chemicals for the purpose of their for the purposes of gaining immortality or effects of this. This is not a new thing. Okay.
No.
This is not a new phenomenon. This whole theory has been around since the medieval ages. I think even prior to the 1950s, before social elites were really thrown out as the target, bad guys in these situations, it was the Jews. That was the people that were generally accused that were generally accused of doing these sorts of things. And this goes back centuries. I mean, centuries.
Let me put on my conspiracy theorist hat.
Sure.
Some will argue that the liberal elite, or social elite, because some publications just pointed specifically at liberals in Hollywood, but the social elite and the Jews can be clumped as one and the same.
Oh yeah, I think that I think what has happened with the Adrenochrome Conspiracy is, I think, for people for people that are trying to get people to buy into this, I think it's sort of evolved past, because again, back in the 1940s, 1950s, generally, people, the Jewish people were the scapegoats for a lot of this, and accused of, like, running Hollywood, running, they're running the left, and all this,
running the media, all that.
Yeah.
They control the banks,
and that part kind of fell off, I think, in order to get people to sort of start buying into this sort of theory. I think a little thing called World War II probably was a big, and the Holocaust was probably a big part of causing this theory to evolve past that. But again, people back in the Middle Ages, I don't think people were very aware of how often Jews were used as a scapegoat, as the bad guy. Like, if you look at, like, old manuscripts, or, like, old medical textbooks for, like, ways that people used to cure diseases or cure things, cure, like, ailments, it was stuff like where chicken parts, crushed up emeralds was a popular one as well.
That's like today's modern copper bracelets.
Mm-hmm.
Wear your magnetic bracelets.
And then you feel better. And then it's weird. And then at the very bottom, it's get rid of the Jews. Like that. And if you're not prepared for this takes you off guard. Like, realizing how much anti-Semitism was around in the Middle Ages. Because what happened was in the 12th century England, there was a monk by the name of Thomas Monmouth was his name. There was a child that went missing in the town, or went missing, or was murdered or something like that, and he essentially was accusing the Jews in England of, like, stealing kids and using their blood for ritual, like Kabbalic rituals, or for their own rituals.
Now, let me ask you a question. Does the story of the Pied Piper play into that time period at all?
I can't remember when that picked up. I'm gonna try to look it up as we're talking here.
I just remember that when he didn't receive payment, his punishment to the town was luring children away.
Oh yeah, I mean, and again, if you're really trying to make somebody, like, be seen as, like, a bad, like a bad person or whatever, I think having something bad happen to children probably is, like, the easiest way to do it. But this dude goes off and he writes a whole, like, essentially hate speech essay, and it gets picked up, and it just goes crazy. And, like, ever since that time period, it was always attached to the Jewish people as this huge negative stereotype that they kidnap your kids and harvest their blood for Jewish rituals, or use their blood to it was a secret component of their bread, or that it was used in Passover, and people believed this. People did. People, yeah. Well, yeah, because again, people were having bad things happen to them at the time, and when bad things happen to you, you always come up with a reason of what happened, or on a particular group. And then this whole theory of this was used in the 1930s, and the Nazis' rise in Germany. I mean, all of this stuff picked up again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then by 1950, because again, in 1940, in, like, Nazi or 39, in, like, Nazi occupied Germany, that was one of the things that they were doing, was they were saying the Jewish elite, the Jewish were running the film industry at the time in Germany, and it sounds so similar to the Adrenochrome Conspiracy of today, just without the Jewish element. So it's like right by 1950, that part just gets knocked out, and then it's no longer the Jewish people. Then it's just social elites in general are now the ones that are doing this.
Yeah, the higher ups.
Oh yeah.
The ones that have wealth that we can't even conceive.
Absolutely. By the 1950s, there was a gentleman by the name of Aldous Huxley. He writes this book called Doors of Perception. And in his book, he starts he becomes very fascinated with this chemical called mescaline, and it's a chemical called mescaline, and this is around the time I think when the theories about like LSD start popping up. People start like trying to figure out ways to like harvest these different chemicals for like psychedelic purposes and all these things. A lot of this stuff starts coming out.
Does this align with the CIA mind control experiments?
Yeah, this is the huge time in which I think that this takes off. So people were really starting to get attached to this idea of this pseudoscience of like there's some sort of chemical stuff that we can harvest from our own body that I think that we can actually that we can harvest and use.
Okay.
And people really, and he himself too was really focused on adrenochrome as well, and he was really like fascinated by it as well. And people pointed this as being like the more modern day beginning of the adrenochrome conspiracy, at least from what I'm seeing it as.
Okay, that's fair enough. It can almost be like compared to a modern day search for the fountain of youth. Mm-hmm. You know, because this mysterious chemical that'll keep you young forever.
Absolutely. In the 1950s, man, I think that's when people really started doing research on adrenochrome and trying to figure out like what it was, because at the time in the 1950s, a lot of people started thinking that it was possible that this chemical has something to do with schizophrenia, but also at the same time there was this research that was going on at the time with the idea of using the blood of the young as a way to revitalize bodies. Like they did these experiments on mice.
Now, over in the United States in the 50s, they were doing the experiments on mice that in the late 30s the Germans were doing on Jews.
Oh yeah.
You know, like absolutely, it was science without conscience.
Oh, absolutely. Like I don't think a lot of people realize like how much science at that time was incredibly was essentially pseudoscience at the time. Like we really had not come very far with creating good standards.
Women were still hysteric, you know.
Yeah,
that was hysteric.
Every time she doesn't want to do the dishes, it might be a good idea to send her to a doctor to see what's wrong. Why she might not want to do the dishes.
Have the doctor bring her to orgasm and then stick her in a cage for a month.
Oh man, these were just real things, and people they did not have any sort of ethics board. Really at the time. They didn't really start till after the 1950s and 60s and all that. So people start going, hey, is it a good idea to be experimenting on people this way?
And keep in mind, in the scientific community in the 50s, we had the scientists over here from Nazi Germany through Operation Paperclip. So they were in the community and able to share their ideas and their findings that they might not have had access to.
Yeah. So what people this is where we're going to start actually probably breaking down this, because again, I'm going to be very critical at times of this theory when I think that there are some glaring problems with the science at the same time. Because again, I'm not saying I totally believe in this theory. I'm not saying I don't. My problem with the Adrenochrome Conspiracy is I don't think people are approaching this conspiracy the right way. Because what happened? Because if you guys go now, try to type this conspiracy into YouTube.
It's hard to find.
The first thing that happens is you get put on some kind of watch list, I'm sure. But if you're mentioning this, by the way, the fact that we even just mentioned the Adrenochrome Conspiracy, this is going to get this would get demonetized off YouTube. It could get removed from YouTube. It's going to get downvoted off Facebook. It's going to get downvoted off Twitter, banned from Twitter. What's going on as of now is this massive campaign. They just not even let people talk about this conspiracy theory, like shoving it under the rug and not even letting people have it. And I don't think that's a good way to deal with misinformation. I think
the problem is the sites that are delivering this information and a lot of the meat of the conspiracy behind this come from our buddies at QAnon.
Oh, well, not my buddy at QAnon. I don't know about that. Not my buddy QAnon.
You know, it's latched into a whole big QAnon conspiracy theory.
Yep.
And, you know, I can't speak for the podcast, but personally myself, I think most of those people are out of their minds. But this is just another thing they're running with that may have a grain of truth in it, but it's going to get covered up by their crazy.
Yeah. Well, again, what happens is when somebody says something, but then you start censoring people then start want to listen, and they're inclined to. I mean, it almost makes people like a martyr for their cause, yes, rather than just confronting this. So that's really what I wanted to do with today's episode. Is I will confront several issues that I have with the conspiracy theory, but at the same time, point some glaring problems that I see, like, culturally, and explain why I think there are problems that need what problems need to be addressed, you know, or are there some kernels of truth within this conspiracy?
That's fair enough.
So yeah, so in the 1950s, this is where this gets really like started off, because what happens is they start doing these studies on these rats, where they take older rats and they take younger rats, and they essentially, I wish Vic was here, so much better at this. They essentially sew them together. They essentially create them to where they share a circulatory system.
Mm-hmm.
And what they found from this study in the 1950s was, after they did this, that it caused the older rats to have improved health issues. The older rats' heart health improved, and their cognitive functioning improved,
mm-hmm,
after they did this.
You know what they underreported?
What?
The fact that the younger mouse started to suffer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They didn't bring that up. And also, too, another thing that didn't happen in these studies, they didn't have control groups often. And the thing that they really didn't account for is it that the blood of the younger mice was causing the older rats to improve, or is it that the fact that the older rat has access to now the younger rat's organs that are causing them to be able to improve? So what happened was by the 2000s, they actually tried to replicate the study from the 1950s of these mice. Berkeley did a study on these in the 2000s, and what they found was that the older rats didn't improve their health based on just blood transfusions. Like, there were not as many health benefits that came from it, just from transfusions alone. And also, a lot of the older rats just died. that was occurring. You know,
I'm sure. I'm sure. You know, it's fascinating, because, not to get too far off topic, but there's also a blood sharing thing, where, you know, people are getting these infusions of younger people's blood.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This is a real thing. It's not a conspiracy.
No. This is a real thing that started, like, I think it was either 2016 or it's in the 2000s that this happened. Yeah.
And I believe it's based off that study with the rats.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, there's a company called Ambrosia. That's what it's called. There was a company called Ambrosia. They started this, I want to say it was 2016, but don't hold me to it. It's in the teens somewhere in there. They started in I want to say they started in California, where they offered this, like, snake oil thing of offering young people, like, younger transfusions.
Yes, it was founded by a new doctor, a guy who just became a doctor, and I think at one point he was promising people he would be able to give them full rejuvenation for $8,000.
And you know the weird part. You say that he was a new doctor. That's true, but he never got licensed.
Oh, I didn't know he actually never officially got licensed.
No. Yeah, he got his doctor. Like, he finished it. Like, he was like doctors, whatever, but he never got a license to practice medicine.
Well,
in the state.
You don't need to go through all that hubbub if you're just going to be a con artist.
Yeah, no, like he was officially like Dr. So-and-so, but he didn't have a license.
Wow.
Yeah, and eventually they got shut. I think eventually, like, the FDA just started super zeroing in on these guys, on them, and eventually they ended up stopping, like, a couple years later. But yeah.
Well, as of now, they still have their website up, but it just has, like, the name of the company and, like, a green pastured background. And from what I understand, I watched a video recently. As of, like, 2019, they were unavailable to be reached, like, for any type of contact.
Yeah. Why do you think companies like that pop up? Why do you think stuff like that happens?
To take advantage of a public outcry. People want to be younger, People want a easy solution instead of eating right and exercising to improve their life. They want a get rich quick scheme, and there's going to be hucksters to take advantage of people in every field.
Mm-hmm.
These
Absolutely.
are just the
Absolutely.
these guys who wanted to create this rejuvenation, whatever it was, through adrenochrome, whatever they were promising. They were just traveling elixir salesmen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so here's the thing that I had. Here's the thing that I have with this. So I think what caused this, what in 2020, the coronavirus played a big part in this conspiracy theory getting revised, because it really came to the forefront. Really came to the forefront in 2000 with the coronavirus. It was because what happened was everybody went on lockdown. Right.
Okay.
So everybody went on lockdown. Everybody was at home. So what happened was all of these celebrities are now being like on Zoom calls, or we're seeing them at home.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, they look haggard. I mean, they look like They look like a bunch of bums. Just.
It was the first time outside of the tabloids that we got to peek behind the curtain a little bit more.
Yeah. And so people are seeing them in this haggard, disheveled state. And what the Adrenochrome Conspiracy theory started saying was, they said, oh, well, now they're not getting access to adrenochrome anymore. They're not getting access to their criminal. They can't get it anymore. So they're going through withdrawals. And that's why they look so bad.
What bothers me about conspiracy theories is sometimes they fit perfectly into fucking place.
Oh, yeah.
That's the issue with this one. Like, saying something like that, in my heart, I want to be like, oh, that's nonsense. But my skeptical brain, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
I want to be well, I think it's really easy to hate the social. It's very easy to hate people that have more than you, or that are doing better off than you, man.
I don't know if this was a meme or if it was true, but they spelled out in their yachts, we're in this together.
Oh my gosh, that's it figures. Oh my god. Oh, all right. So, but again, I'm gonna take another swing at the conspiracy, like another big issue that I have. I'm gonna bring an objection to this theory, that the reason about why they don't look so good, and kind of explain it, because this is the reason why. This is something that I don't think people understand about people in TVs and movies. The reason why they look so good is the amount of time that they spend in a makeup chair prior to going on TV. People don't realize how much prep goes into that before they're on there. So if you see people without their makeup on, I mean, again, it's like seeing a person that a woman that normally wears makeup, and then seeing her without it. It's almost, for some people, it could be like night and day with how much effort that they put into it. It's the same for celebrities. People don't understand how much effort they put into their physical appearance to look good. I mean, if you want an example of this, I'm gonna give you one. The 1960 debate, between Kennedy and Nixon, okay, was the very first public televised debate. And if you go watch it, what happened was they came to Nixon and Kennedy, and they said, "Hey guys, you need to understand, this is not like radio. It's different. There's going to be lights. It's going to be hot. You're going to be on camera. You need to do some makeup." And Kennedy was like, "Oh, yeah, cool. No problem." And Nixon was like, "Oh, that's womanly. I'm not going to. That's womanly. I'm not going to be putting on no makeup. Don't put it. Go away. I'm not going to do that. I'm a red-blooded American. You can't put." I mean, had a super fit about this. And if you watch the debate on TV, the dude looks like a ghost that's dying for the second time. He looks bad.
He's bloated.
He's sweating. He's almost iridescent at times. Yeah. When you're watching him, he looks bad. And that's why
the election.
Yeah, and it did. And Kennedy won based on that. And when they polled people at the time for it, people that watched the debate said that Kennedy won based on watching it. But when they polled people that listened to on the radio, they said Nixon won, because the only thing they could do was hear what he said. So it was but that's just another example of what I'm talking about. So I think that's I think that explains, why celebrities are kind of looking haggard. Or again, maybe they're not getting their actual drugs.
No, I absolutely agree with you. Just to piggyback off that too a little bit. I know once we got shut down and stand-up was taken away, I was devastated. It emotionally drained me and crushed me because that was my love. And I'm sure a lot of these performers are a little bit sad on the inside too. Like, yeah, they're surrounded by their mansions or what have you. It's easy to say that. But if they're actually acting or stand-up or music is their passion, they're hurting as well.
Absolutely. There's a stage high. There's like, there's something that you get from being on stage and performing and making people happy that you just can't explain.
Yeah.
And then when you take that away, like, you've had it like with this, you feel bummed, and
Honestly,
it can manifest with you in how much you take care of yourself when you can't do it.
Yeah, you know how it is to rock a crowd. Getting off that stage after that, the closest thing I could describe it to is taking adrenochrome.
Yeah. So I think that. So from that's why there was a huge resurgence in it now. I mean, the weird thing was like in the Trump town hall, when she was asking about that, when she was saying, I can't remember the lady, I think it was Savannah Guthrie that was interviewing. She asked him, I said, will you denounce what these guys are saying, that like the left is a bunch of like, a bunch of pedophile people, like, doing all these like occult rituals and all this. But the weird part was that's what they're talking about. I think they're really talking about the Adrenochrome Conspiracy. Now, Donald Trump did a very bad job denouncing it.
You don't say.
In that moment, I'm like, but that's what they were getting at in that debate. I don't think a lot of people realize that.
And you know what? I want to touch on something because multiple sources, and even just there, have mentioned the liberal elite, or liberal politicians, Hollywood elites, and I think that's in folly. I think it's elite in general. I don't think it has a political sway. I think if you're doing this evil type of shit, it's not because you're a conservative or a Democrat or
absolutely.
Anything like that.
If there's one thing that we absolutely know, the most non-discriminatory people are drug dealers.
Yeah.
They do not discriminate. They don't, they don't ask questions. They don't judge. They don't, they don't care about they don't care about your politics. They just, they don't care about the color of your skin, just the color of your money, and I think that's a big part of it too. I think that it is not if this is true, it's not limited. I think just leftists. I'm pretty sure people on the right probably get their fix too if it's real.
Yeah. Like, are you telling me Dick Cheney doesn't look like he just eats kids for breakfast?
What's I can tell you, it doesn't look like it's helping him.
Yeah.
Does look like a troll that lives under a bridge. Obviously, maybe he's not. Maybe he's not getting enough. I don't know.
After Harvey Weinstein got arrested, he looked pretty bad in the photos afterwards. Maybe he wasn't getting his supply anymore either.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Or people tie this into the Jeffrey Epstein,
Mm-hmm.
The Jeffrey Epstein murders too, for what happened. So here's the one thing that I don't think people truly need to understand. So if you look at this, there's a huge element with the Adrenochrome Conspiracy that people don't get. There's a science. They try to debunk it purely from a scientific standpoint oftentimes. Well, because what they'll say is that the adrenochrome can't work. Like, there's no reason that these things should be working, because when you harvest this from people, what adrenochrome does is it does blood clots. Like it helps clot blood. That's what it does. You can buy this off the internet. There are some
really?
Yeah, no, you can buy adrenochrome. Yeah, you can absolutely buy this chemical. You can't get it for a lot of people because it's not
as
like
much as I've searched for it. The last few days, it's never came up on a shopping wish list.
No, I never showed up on a Facebook ad.
Yeah, looking for adrenochrome in your area.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder what the adrenochrome on Wish would be like. What like with that?
Oh, man. It'd probably be what are those epinephrine shots or whatever you put in.
Oh, ephedrine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or an EpiPen.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, and so if you look at it from a purely scientific base, that right there should debunk it for it. If there's no reason to do it. And they even did studies on people that are published. There are published papers or other people that have talked about like using, like essentially taking adrenochrome, and people said that it actually gives more of a sedative feeling rather than a euphoric feeling.
Well, let me ask you this, because you might have a better knowledge of it than I do. How is it administered?
Well, the conspiracy theory says you inject it in your eye, but like
Ooh.
according to the sheer scientific point, but a big part of the adrenochrome conspiracy that you have to understand is the mystical element of it.
Mhm.
That there was rituals involved in order
Mm.
to take the adrenochrome and turn it into some sort of compound for immortality, or if you're going to do that, and I think that's an integral part, because again, from a purely scientific point, it's not going to work. If it's going to work, there has to be a mystical element involved with it too. It has to be an ingredient in something,
So
or it
the
has to be
occult comes into play.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You
I
know,
mean, that makes sense if they're going for immortality.
absolutely. And if you look at, say, like we're talking about alchemy, that's going to be something that's going to come up, I think, throughout this month on our podcast. We're going to talk about how alchemy works, how ancient alchemy works, and I'll touch on it a little bit, because Vic does such a better job of it than I do. He educated me a lot on this. Ancient alchemy looks a lot like mysticism, just as much as chemistry, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, and a lot of alchemical success involves them often using mystical means, or often having to appeal to some sort of higher power for them to take mundane components and make it work.
Think about it like this: if you were, you know, the royal alchemist, the royal magician, or what have you for the court, but your love was science, of course you would put on displays that would make it seem like you were able to do more than you could, just so in your downtime you had the finances and the resources to actually work on your science.
Oh, absolutely, man. And then our next episode, we're going to talk about Nicholas Flamel. That's going to be the one, and we're going to talk about his, and we're going to talk about his. And there's so much more to that story than just what you'll see on a Wikipedia thing or watching an episode. It's a lot more like Harry Potter, I think, than people really give it credit for.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. But there's a mystical element to it. There's probably some sort of ritualistic element that goes into using components, appealing to a higher power, and then it doing something to those components for it to do what you need it to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yes, when you try to debunk adrenochrome from a purely scientific standpoint, from a entirely scientific way, it's very easy, because adrenochrome by itself won't do anything.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. But if you bring in a sorcerer, you change the game.
absolutely, absolutely.
And you know,
Absolutely.
they say another thing. I don't want to jump ahead on you, but this is the part that I can actually believe and kind of get behind in the whole conspiracy theory, because you ask, where do the children come from? And they just say, all the I guess underprivileged and migrant children in the world that don't have records and can't be accounted for go missing every day.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, if you want to bring up the whole thing about the children in detention, like on
Mm-hmm.
the United States border, they had hundreds of kids that have gone missing. Now, again, this is where I'm being critical. If I'm you know, you can't have stuff like that happen. I mean, it's just bad and of an awful thing to happen. You
Yes.
know, you know, but as a government, if stuff like this happens and you allow this to happen on your watch, I don't get mad. When people start like acute, like I don't get mad when people start holding your feet to the fire for going, where are these kids? Like, where are these kids? What's going on? Something bad must be
Yeah.
happening, because again, nothing positive is going to be happening from these kids disappearing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's still one of those things where we have no answers.
yeah.
We have zero answers about any of those children.
Yeah, but at the same time, I also don't think that they're. I mean, I used to work for the state, in Indiana. I used to, like, back in like 7 some odd years ago. I used to work for the
Okay.
state. Now again, people will accuse it's a leftist wing. It's a leftist wing thing, accusing that conspiracy where all this is going on, and all this. Now, back in the day in Indiana, like Mitch Daniels, one of the things he did was when he came in as our governor, he doubled the size of the Department of Child Services in our state. Like,
that's phenomenal.
He doubles the budget. He makes it more powerful. He makes a whole cabinet dedicated to him, because and the reason why this happened was because the Indy Star, which is a massive left-wing media machine in the state of Indiana,
okay,
was holding our government to the fire, like holding our feet to the fire for all of the essentially the child abuse that was going on and wasn't being stopped in our state. So, you know, if there's this massive leftist conspiracy that's going on, this wouldn't be happening probably in our state. Like, we wouldn't be seeing one of the biggest leftist organizations in our state that's trying to hold them accountable, saying, "Hey, what's going on? Something's wrong. We need to be protecting kids." So that's why I don't think it's just a leftist thing. I don't think it's just this, but also this is another reason why I have a hard time believing this particular conspiracy.
And also, we're almost contained, you know, because when we think about things, we think it in the context of in the United States,
right?
But this is supposed to be a global conspiracy.
Absolutely.
So it's easy, you know, for us on the home front, especially in a more civilized culture, to be able to hold people accountable and protect our children. But there's still plenty of third world countries that can be taken advantage of.
True.
You know, child brides, female castrations. Like, there's wild stuff that happens all across the world every day. There was still slavery.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, so let me ask you this: we've been going on for a little while. In your heart of hearts, do you think that this is do you think that this is a real? Do you think there's any truth to it?
In my heart of hearts, I want to say no, but that doesn't mean I don't think there are things happening behind closed doors with the elite, and that doesn't mean I don't think there are children being abducted and used. I don't know what purpose for, but I just see that as a great possibility.
Absolutely. 100%. I do think I think there are elite groups doing very bizarre rituals that occur. Like, if you think of Bohemian Grove, if you guys have never heard of Bohemian Grove, me and Vic did a whole episode. It was actually I think it was our season finale, what we did, like, on our YouTube channel. Either 2 or 3. It was one of them. You know, it's a whole organization of not only people on the right, but also some left people too. But you'll see a lot more, like, people on the right typically tend to be like a member of this particular group, a group of elite people that meet out in the woods. By the way, guys, this is all 100% true.
Yeah, you can check it out.
I'm not even going into the conspiracy part. That meet out in the woods every year or other year or so. They all put on robes, and they all do these weird mystical chants to a 40-foot owl.
And this is going to make it sound less true, but it's all like on the hush hush, no cell phones, no cameras, no none of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single Republican president since Eisenhower has been a member of this group doing these rituals. Barack Obama, I believe, also was included. The only the only person that is not a member is Donald Trump. Now, he's not a member. Never been a confirmed member, because again, their membership is, you can tell who's a member.
You can see who was there what year.
Yeah.
Who attended that meeting.
Yeah. Now, Donald Trump was on a stage with several members of the people that go to Bohemian Grove. And we all know that Donald Trump has no problems throwing people under the bus for all of the weird stuff they do. That dude said nothing.
That's fascinating.
During the debate. Not a single thing about Bohemian Grove. So what does that show? 2 things. One, that shows some serious power.
Yeah.
And that shows fear.
Well, he's been seen hobnobbing with people that have attended these parties.
Right.
You know, like throughout his personal life, even before his presidency, because I don't think people realize that he's not. He's a very powerful man right now, but he's been a very powerful man for quite a long fucking time.
I think the Colonel, he has, and honestly, he's probably part. And I think one thing that people don't realize, there's probably multiple types of groups. There is this weird, again, this kernel of truth that I'm talking about in this is I think that there is a lot more occult, mystical, at pomp and circumstance at a minimum. Pomp and circumstance at a minimum. Well, at least some homage to it. That occurs on an elite level.
That the adrenochrome, really started picking up in the 50s, picking up steam in the 50s. Mm. And I had mentioned, with Operation Paperclip, Nazi scientists coming over. And as we're all aware, the Nazis were real big into the occult. What's to say they didn't bring over something that would be able to activate this? And this is just, this Absolutely. Is out there conspiracy, though.
No. And honestly, I think what we need to realize is at least that, again, people, you don't get into positions of power, you don't become a social elite member wasting your time.
Yeah.
You just don't. You don't waste your time doing things like this. These are not people that waste their time. They're not going to do something that they probably don't think they're going to get something out of. Now, what is that? I don't know.
Yeah, because it's not always about what they get out of it. It's sometimes about what they believe they get out of it.
Absolutely. So I think that they're probably in my heart of hearts, I think there is some sort of ritualistic pomp and circumstance that happens with the social elite. I think that is a real thing that is true in the Adrenochrome Conspiracy. Now, do I necessarily think that it's the part of we're harvesting children's fear to do this? I don't think so. I think there's too much liability, and I don't think that they're getting something out of it. I just don't.
That's fair enough.
For our patron part, I will tell you something I will bring something up, and we're going to talk about something that I've seen throughout history. I have a great idea for a discussion in our Patreon. I really would love to pick your brain about.
Okay, sounds good.
But I think that they've been going on for a little bit of a while. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up about the Adrenochrome Conspiracy? Any final thoughts or anything?
I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to touch on.
Oh, absolutely. It's guys, it's a weird conspiracy. There's a lot of stuff that happens from it. Do I believe it? No. But again, I don't like the way that people have been trying to handle this conspiracy. I think if you're going to tackle it, you can't just tackle it from a purely scientific standpoint. I think you have to also address the mystical element that's probably coming from it too.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't think that the best way to go about confronting this is by banning videos about it off Facebook, banning videos about YouTube. I don't think you can't quiet people like this and make them into martyrs for their cause.
Yeah, that just makes speculation grow.
Absolutely, and I think it'll only make the conspiracy stick around more. But also at the same time, I'll think if it's true, if something of it is true, it's going to be people like Mark Zuckerberg or people that are above him that are going to be pulling the strings to get this. Be like, we can't be talking about this.
Yeah, those are going to be the people that are pulling
this.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Awesome. But man, Johnny, I want to thank you so much, man, for coming on and talking about this with me, man. It was it was very interesting talking and picking your brain about the Adrenochrome Conspiracy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me again. I really appreciated it.
Absolutely, man. Again, before we end the normal part of the podcast, again, tell people if they want to catch out the Inquizative Mind podcast, man, where can they listen to your stuff?
It's spelled a little bit differently, guys. It's INQUIZATIVE Minds, Inquisitive Minds. I'm available on all streaming platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Chromecast, Google Cast, all that jazz. You can check out our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Inquisitive Minds, or Instagram @Inquisitive Minds. Just check me out. I'm a stand-up comic. I try and be funny. I try and put out good content.
Absolutely, guys. He asks He asks those weird questions that we love to ask on our podcast, and he asks the hard questions sometimes that have to be asked in this as well, and that's why we respect him so much. And I think that you guys should absolutely go over and check his podcast out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Johnny, for coming on. And if you guys like this episode of the podcast, don't forget to like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure that you guys give us a review wherever you guys are listening. That's one of the best ways that you guys can help the podcast grow and show your appreciation to us. If you guys really want to help even more and check out the rest of this podcast, make sure you go over to our Patreon and sign up today. And just for even $1 a month, you guys can get the rest of this podcast as well as all of the bonus videos that we put up on our Patreon just for our patrons that we love so much. But until next time, guys, keep believing, because we'll keep listening. All right, Johnny. So I want to pick your brain about something else. Have you ever seen the photos of the celebrities of today and how they look like celebrities from back in the day?
Oh, yeah, I have. Like Keanu Reeves is immortal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So everybody always jokes about how this probably isn't true. There's no way the Adrenochrome Conspiracy be true. But if you go look, there are several photographs of very famous people that you can see from back in the day. Like Conan O'Brien was one that I saw.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves. Who was another one that I saw? Orlando Bloom was another one that I recently saw. Not too long ago.
Matthew McConaughey too.
Matthew McConaughey was another one as well. Have you ever?
Go ahead.
You go ahead. Go.
I was just it's fascinating because the pictures look exactly like them, but in my mind, I always think with humans, you can only make so many different ones. There's going to be a couple duplicates.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Do you think there's any truth to that celebrities can live forever, or that they do?
See, I don't like it that they say celebrities, because I feel like anyone who could live forever, and this is just me going off on a tangent, would understand the influence and the power and how you can make so much more happen without being.